Dr. Shamoun, one of your main research focuses is on sudden oak death. Would you explain what that is?
Sudden oak death refers to a sudden death of oaks in California. The reason this name was coined because the disease or the pathogen was introduced from Europe to California. It was attacking landscape plants and all of a sudden jumped into oaks. And that's why they coined it as sudden oak death, because the oaks were dying suddenly. And that's how it came the name sudden oak death. But keep in mind that sudden oak death, this pathogen called Phytophthora ramorum, has a very wide host range. It attacks more than 120 species, whether it's plants or landscape plants or even conifers or broadleaf trees.
Since when have you been researching sudden oak death?
I started working and conducting research on sudden oak death or Phytophthora ramorum, the causal agent, since 2005.
What are the signs that a tree is infected?
The signs you can see in nursery plant, at least in Canada, you will see the foliage browning and yellowing, and especially in the midrib area. And there is already now some companies produced a pocket diagnostic thing that you can take a small piece of infected area and put it there, and you will see band production of that means positive for Phytophthora. But we can see it under microscope, and we have also developed a selected media where you can see the production of the spores, and through that you can identify them under microscope. In California, where it attacks the trees, especially say tan oak and other tree species, you will see the bleeding on the trunk and the foliage defoliation, and finally the mortality of the tree.
Are there any treatments for the tree if it has been infected?
Well, there has been many research conducted in California and Oregon, but the most important thing is eradication, cut and burn. Once this pathogen affects a tree, it's hard to recover it, especially if it's left for a long time. But the best thing on disease management is prevention for happening this disease. But once it's infected, then the best approach or medication tool is to cut and burn it from, controlling it from further spreading.
So Phytophthora ramorum is an omycete plant pathogen. Could you explain what an omycete is and how it differs from a fungus?
An oomycete is a kingdom that it has its own, it's not true fungi. It's closely related to green algae, and it has some structure that moves through the water, like sporangia or zoospores. And oomycetes, as I said, are not considered true fungi. It's by themselves, it's that classified as Chromista or oomycete. And so that's why when you talk about any Phytophthora, not necessarily ramorum, but say Phytophthora attack potatoes, called Phytophthora infestans, they're all grouped under oomycetes, and they are, as I said, phylogenetically very close to green algae. They are not true fungi. They are although when you culture them in a culture, you will see that the mycelia, it looks like a fungus. So sometimes we call this organism, or oomycete, we call them fungus-like organism. So sometimes we use that term. We call them fungus-like organisms. But in reality, they are not true fungi. They are closely related to green algae. Yeah.
It seems like a relatively new disease. Do you have any ideas of its origin?
That's a very good question. Up until now, we don't know. And there is a recent exploration by some European and North American scientists who went all the way to Asian countries, primarily Vietnam. They think that might have been originated from there. So as of now, we don't know exactly where it is, but chances are it could have originated on rhododendron in Vietnam. That's why one of the reasons why we're calling these lineages, the European lineages and the North American lineages, we don't know the origin of these organisms. So we have designated them, the European, as EU1 and EU2, while the North American we have designated as NA1 and NA2. Once these origin of this pathogen will be 100% sure where it is, these lineages will co-evolve to new species. So that's a very good question.
Do you see climate change affecting the spread?
Climate change is here to stay and has an impact, not necessarily on Phytophthora ramorum, but also on other plant pathogens. The climate has direct and indirect effect on biology, epidemiology of this pathogen, and the distribution of the plants, the migration of the plant. So chances are that the impact of this pathogen will increase, and its impact on plant species and tree species, and not only Phytophthora ramorum, but other Phytophthora species like there's already introduced Phytophthora species in Canada, like Phytophthora cinnamomi, Phytophthora lateralis. Those are not native to Canada, but already they are established in the urban area forestry.
Which oak tree populations in the world are currently being affected, and which ones are at risk?
Well, there is the tan oak and California oaks. They are mainly affected, but tan oak is the major oak species. In addition to oaks, there is another species called baylaurel. California baylaurel is considered to be the reservoir of this pathogen. The leaves produce abundant spores of sporangia and zoospores, and those are the infection structures. And so major oaks would be California oaks and tan oaks. Those are the major ones. And other oak species should be tested through experimentation and find out which are, say, highly susceptible, moderate, or resistant. Through experimentation, you will really categorize these oak species and their susceptibility to, say, different lineages. Keep in mind that we are not only dealing with a single lineage, we're dealing with 4 different lineages.
How has sudden oak death affected other species and the ecosystem as a whole?
Well, as I said earlier, Phytophthora ramorum has a very wide host range. It infects more than 120 species of plants, including trees, including conifers and broadleaf trees. So you will see the infection ranges from landscape plants to broadleaf trees to conifer trees. So it has an impact on not only nurseries or landscape plants, but also on horticultural plants, some ornamentals plants, and even tree species. So having this wide host range makes the Phytophthora ramorum a very, very interesting pathogen to continue research on it.
Another main focus of your research is anosum root rot disease. Would you explain what that is?
Anosum root rot pathogen is a root pathogen that causes major disease on conifers and even some broadleaf species, but primarily attacks conifer trees. It is a hidden enemy, I call it, because it's in the root system, and the infection can take place, but you can't see the symptoms after a few years. And so this pathogen attacks the roots. And one of the interesting things to know where is the root rot pathogen, you will see if you're going through survey through, say, remote sensing, you will see some death circle, call it. So this is a sign of a disease is there. Another thing is that when it's wind-thrown trees, that's another sign that the trees has been infected but could not stand the wind, so that, it'll just blow it down. And so this disease has an impact not only on the productivity of the conifers, but also on the trade issue, because we are dealing with trade partner countries where we sell products, wood products. We want to make sure that we are selling them clean wood lumber, free of these pathogens. Now the world of globalization and movement of the pathogens, it will have an impact of moving, say, North American into Europe and vice versa. So for instance, during the World War II, the American troops has moved the pathogen of, say, from the pine species from eastern US to Italy. And after 60 years, they found out that this pathogen does not belong to Italy. So through DNA technology, they traced it back to North America. So that's an example how these pathogens are moved and what would be the impact and consequences of moving pathogen around the world. It will have impact not only on the forest ecosystem, but also on the trade issue.
If it is detected in a tree, are there any treatments available?
Yes, the major thing, once it's infected tree taken place, it means that the first thing to do is to cut the tree and get the stump out, because if you leave the stump infected, it means that you are leaving the inoculum there as the food base. And keep in mind that this pathogen also is transmitted through root contacts. So when you leave an infected stump, it has this pathogen. When you plant a new trees by that area, it'll be automatically infected. And also this pathogen produces sporocarps, like fruiting bodies. And then through fruiting body, these spores move and then land on a tree that's being cut or harvested, so that continues life cycle. So those are some of the major things that you do, the stumping out, and make sure that now in Europe they develop biological control product where they cut the tree and slop it or infect it or put it with some biological control product or a saprophyte pathogen called Phleobiopsis gigantea, or call it stop rot. And so those are some of the major things how you can detect and manage the disease.
Do you see climate change affecting the spread of anosum root rot disease?
Yes, indeed. Climate change will increase the impact of this disease because the spores will be landing on the cut stumps, and there is no rain to wash these spores. And once the spores land on the cut stump, it'll continue its life cycle. So the more we have drought, the more the infection impact and the incidence of this disease will increase. And that's the impact of the climate change.
Okay, Dr. Shamoun, thank you very much for conducting this interview with me.
Thank you very much, Max. It's a pleasure to be with you, and good luck.